Lecture is on basically knowing the ins and outs of a camera and how you can utilize it to better your photography game and skills, and how a lot of people can really become a great photographer if they want to. So this is a photo right here that I took last week after class. You may have walked up these stairs this morning whenever you were coming here to class, or you have at least seen them. Whenever you see something beautiful, no, I'm not saying this is beautiful, but just in general, whenever you see something that's beautiful, what do you think? Does it motivate you to want to do the same thing? Does it motivate you to create the same thing? Does it motivate you to strategize, to imagine, to copy or research that idea? Now that you have all those thoughts in your mind, it's time to get that idea onto a canvas. First, to know how we do the ideas or how we can work a camera is to know about the history. I believe it can be very beneficial. So this right here is called an obscura, and what it is basically a dark room. You have a small hole right there, and whatever is on the outside, the light will reflect off of it, and the light is photons. It's a particle that goes, it's basically how you see, and it will go through that hole, and the object will be projected over here it will be projected inverted upside down inside that dark room, and that room has to be dark because it's hard to see if there's already light in the room too, so it has to be dark. This is considered the ancestor of cameras, pretty much. I also got this source from Britannica.com. This was used in the 16th century as a drawing aid for artists. This is the oldest photo surviving ever. This was taken in France in 1916 by a man named Nicephore Niepce, and it took about 8 hours to just take this photo. Yeah, and it was on his balcony, and I forget what the town's name was, but he used a material called bitumen material, and it was a metal plate, and this was actually a lot duller than what it actually looked like, or this was a lot more detailed than what it actually looked like because it was duller. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Not very detailed, but it is the first surviving photograph that we have. That photo I got from earthspot.com. Next, we invented the gelatin dry plate, and what that did was allowed an instantaneous picture. And that instantaneous picture was taken inside this camera we have right here, and the gelatin dry plate was on the back. And it was invented in 1871 by Dr. Richard Maddox, so there was no need for a tripod anymore. After that, we had paper film. Paper film was a lot more portable, and you could store not just a whole bunch of metal plates that you'd have to carry around. It could be as small as a roll of paper film or negatives. That was invented in 1885 by George Eastman. I got this information from historythings.com. And then we had commercialized cameras in 1913 by Oscar Barnick, and we had the first digital camera in 1988, which was the Kodak DCS. Now we have phone cameras. The first one was called the VP210. You probably never heard of it. It was the first one. And now we have the iPhone 13 Pro Max by Apple. And the camera on this is so far the best camera on a phone we've ever had. It has 4 cameras. There's 3 on the front, 1 on the back, and it can take photos up to 63 megapixels. And just to give a perspective of this, a camera, the first digital camera ever, period, was only able to take 0.1 megapixel photos. And this takes 63 megapixel photos, and it's that small. And we also have a LiDAR scanner right here. So now we can detect different wavelengths of light with a camera. This upcoming information I got from creativelive.com. And we're going to talk about the anatomy of a camera. So first we have the light and the object is bouncing off of. Then we have the lens, and the lens acts like the obscura, and then leads it to the aperture. And what the aperture does is detects, it basically works like your pupil of your eye. It detects how much light precisely goes in towards the shutter. And the shutter opens and closes for a certain amount of time. And how long that shutter is open or closed determines your exposure or shutter speed. And then you have the sensor. And what the sensor does is converts that analog photon information into digital information. Something good to know is that the bigger the sensor of the camera, the bigger it is, the more information you're going to have, the more information is going to be retained. Back then, this would have been the chemical slab or a film sheet. This next photo is the most viewed photo in the world, and I'm almost 100% certain that you've seen this photo. Yeah? I got this from sfgate.com. This was taken in 1996 by Charles O'Rear in the Valley in California, and he got paid $100,000 to sell this to Microsoft. Now to go to some terminology. I got this terminology from creativelight.com. So right here, what this is called an out of focus background, or bokeh, which is usually seen at night whenever you have a bunch of points of light out of focus in the background. Works really well for some photos. It's basically how sharp the image is, and this is not sharp, so this is out of focus. Then we have focal length, and that's basically the length of the lens. This one is 300 millimeters. It's from the lens to the sensor, I believe. 75, 300 millimeters. Then you can also call it magnification or zoom. Then we have exposure. That is how long the shutter is open, or the shutter speed, as I talked about. This would be an example. I took this photo last week with the Student Photography Association, and this is an example of long exposure in a dark room. And what this can show is that we waved around a bunch of lights and it lit it up over a long, I'd say about 6 seconds. And then we have ISO. This is a high ISO picture. I took this at an airport. This was my last day of working at the airport, and it is an example of high ISO because it let in a large amount of information of light at one time. And that basically determines the sensitivity of the sensor. Last but not least, use manual mode, and you will be able to use every aspect of what I just talked about whenever you do photography, and this can help how you, this mode is your friend. Yeah. I don't know how to describe it, but the point is that you are the brain behind the lens, and this will allow you to use your maximum creativity, and that's it. Thank you.